Hello and welcome back to the Prima Webinars. I'm Ollie and this is the third episode of the sales reporting series where today we're going to focus on gap analysis. The areas of Prima that will be covered on today's tutorial will include sales versus gaps by account manager and company, sales versus gaps by company and classification, customer business review, invoice sales analysis and CRM queries built into the contacts lookup in Prima as well. Now if I just switch on to my live screen, and from here, where you would go to is into reporting, into reports, and then from here, then search on all, click search, and from here, then you'll view every single report available in the system. Now, jumping into that first one, we have towards the bottom, as you can see here, all the ones labelled sales. The one we're looking at first is sales versus gaps by account manager and by company. So if I click into there, this report will show you by 12-month view, your account managers, your companies, and then a spend alongside that 12-month period as well. So on this test environment, if I just make that bigger, just hit maximise at the top, you can then see the account manager, the company, and also then an overview in terms of their spend over that period. So as you can see on this test database, £57 in total on this account, £4,000 on this one, £18,000. You can then see over the 12-month period when those figures are actually going through and being added on. So as an example, this report is really useful for if you're spotting that a certain account here, Mike Smith FC, he's not spending in June, not spending in August, dropping off October, November, you're then identifying gaps then potentially in the spend. So this one, a little bit more broad in the view, is looking at the actual company level, account manager level, and then an overall spend. So it's not giving too much information away in terms of classifications, but it is telling you exactly what that account performance is. So it's helping you to identify some sort of trends on that view as well. Now if I close off there, and one thing to note as well, when you are switching between PDF reports in Prima at the moment, best thing to do, go into your settings, clear the cache, and that'll then refresh then when you open the new one, because sometimes it can cache the report and bring up the same report when you are clicking into a new one. So jumping into the second one, sales versus gaps by company and classification. So similar to the first report there, now this one will pull back every single company in the database. So what may be wise to do is on the first time when you open this, jump into criteria top left, and you can then actually identify a specific account. So rather than looking at every account in your database, jump into criteria top left as I've just done there, and then actually assign a company against it. So you're only looking at 2 pages worth of data rather than potentially 500 pages, 1,000 pages, whatever it may be. So just jumping back into the report there, this report by company and then by classification in that section. So as you can see, overall spend in that classification and then a 12-month view as well. So again, you can then identify at classification level if they're spending in certain categories. So of course, if there's anything towards the bottom here, potentially I can have a conversation, right, okay, adhesive and tapes, we do some of those, books and pads are strong in those normally, so you know, conversations to be had. And you can also see then the actual spend as well. So if they are spending potentially 30 grand in July, that might be a reason why they're not spending in August in those areas. So of course, it's a good overview of the account and any potential conversations that of course you can have with your customers there as well. Okay, so that was the sales versus gaps covered off. So as you can see, sales versus gaps by account manager and company, and sales versus gaps by company and classification. Now moving into the customer business review, this is available at the top here in the reporting area. But what it is also available in is pretty much every single window in the system. So when you go into a company, when you go into a sales quote, when you go into a sales order, the customer review is available in the top right. So really useful when you are speaking to prospects, the customers, and you're wanting to get some snippet information in terms of potential gaps, if that's the conversation you're going to be having, looking for areas to, explore into. Then when you go into that company record, you then have the customer review, top right here, and just to note as well, if you wanted to, you can click to the right of that, and that will pull through then the sales versus gap reports within there too. So clicking into the customer review, then from there then, and I've preloaded this one from before, starting on page 1, you've got the net spend, contract versus non-contract, you've got year on year, month on month, so a lot of vital and decent information within this report, but on a basis of gap analysis, if I skip through the report, skipping past order sources, top 30 products, then towards the back you've then got product classification analysis just here. So you can then see in the paper category, printer, fax, copy, supplies, etc. You can then see in a graph form, and you can also then see percentage of spend, the actual spend, and all the classifications then in a visual, as well as hard figures within those previous reports we're looking at as well. Okay, and then moving on to now the invoice sales analysis. So back into reports. Now you could run this in the sales analysis, but just bearing in mind that's based on sales order data, so the likes of credits, returns aren't taken into account. So it's always worthwhile looking at most reports based on the invoice data, because of course posted invoice and credits going across your financial system, it's going to be kind of true figures in the system. So if I just make that bigger, and one really important thing to note on the gap analysis within Prima is the sales versus gaps, of course, identify the trends, customer review identifies classification areas. Now, the invoice sales analysis, although you can build a gap analysis style report in terms of bringing through classifications and bringing through other things such as that, it will only pull through data that has been actually invoiced. So as an example, for whatever reason, if you're kind of majoring in furniture and for whatever reason that month you've not sold any, then furniture for that month would not show in the report, so it wouldn't actually show as a visible kind of gap. So just to show you what I mean by that, if I jump into attributes, make that a little bit bigger. Now we do have an invoiced analysis tutorial, so it's worthwhile having a look at that if this is the first time you've seen this. But scrolling further down, I can bring through then product classification. So within the analysis reports, you can then drag and drop, bring it through, and I could insert that just in front of the account code and company just there. So then you can then see by the classification, by the account and the company, what they've actually spent and if they have spent. Some prefer to put this towards the top, so it could be the case that I put this alongside the measures. And then from there, then you can see, right, okay, for the month of June, catering, delivery, envelopes, etc. These are the actual categories that have been spent. So as you can see there, on this test environment, furniture would be a classification, but that would not list if there's been no invoice figures for that particular classification. So that's just something to bear in mind. So it has been fed back by customers, so it is something we will be working towards. And that is something as well in terms of reporting. We will be introducing something called Power BI reports into the back office into the future as well. But for the time being, this is a useful tool for gap analysis as well if you wanted to do it this way. Okay, and last but not least, diving into now the contacts lookup. So within your company and into contacts, there are CRM queries built into the system for the likes of lapsed accounts, increased spenders, and also people buying for the first time. So on the topic again of gap analysis, we can actually find gaps in the sense that they're actually lapsed customers. So I guess a gap in the sense that they would normally spend 400, but they've only spent 200, or they've dropped in spend by 95%. You can actually then see that as a lapsed account, otherwise known as kind of seeing a gap there. So clicking into contacts, and then from here then, clicking at the very top, your coloured bar there at the top, that'll then extend the filters. And once you've done that, you can then go down to CRM query at the bottom, click into that button, and then from here then, there are some queries to actually populate within here. So some of them relevant to gap analysis, some not. So one of them, which is probably the most simple, companies buying for the first time within a period. So not really gap analysis, but again, something you can think about separate to this session. But ones that is, or ones that are rather, relevant to this would be lapsed accounts. So companies that have not spent so many percent in the last so many days of the total spend in the last few months. So just to break that down further, is if they've not spent 50% in the past 29 days, so it's 29th of June when this has been recorded, of the total spend in the month before. So that what that would look at is 50% drop in the past 29 days of June versus the month before, which is May. So you can actually tailor this to be quarterly, half monthly, 6 monthly, whatever you wanted to do. You can put in your own figures, apply that to the grid, apply more filters if you wanted to. So if you wanted to look at purely your accounts, if you're an account manager, looking at just purely the primary contacts, other things like that you can actually do. So you'd run a search, and then from there, then that would then identify those accounts or those contacts that meet that criteria. So these, as you can see, Ollie Rolls FC has dropped in spend by 50% versus the month before on this basis. So that's the one query looking at the lapsed accounts based on a percentage, and you can also do the same thing but based on an actual value. So the one at the top there, companies that have not spent potentially £1 in the past 29 days after spending at least £50 with us in the prior month before that. So if they spent 50 quid at least in May, nothing at all so far in June, apply that to the grid and run a search. Now all this is actually doing is pulling back contact information. Now you could export this and put it into your mailing system. You could have an integration within Control Marketing and push that out through the system. And you can also, through the Contact Grid Manager, same kind of principle, jump into there, click into the CRM query, and then from there then get your results and push them out into a journal. So as an example, if you're doing callback reminders, telesales routines, whatever it may be, you can actually do it through a grid manager as well, which is kind of linking then, similar to gap analysis, to push through some sort of kind of telesales routine there as well. Okay, so that's everything for today's session. If you've got any questions at all, feel free to ask away. Thanks for your time and have a great weekend.